Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another interview with Zine Quest 3 game creator. So today we're going to interview Giles Pritchard, who is the creator of Rascals. I don't know too much about Rascals. All I know is that it involves space, and that is good enough for me. So thank you, Giles, for joining me today. I know it's really, really early in the morning there. I'm horrible with time zones. You can kill me later.
No, look, thank you very much for having me on, John. It's a pleasure. It is 2 a.m., so do excuse me if I have you sound a little bit incoherent at times. But yeah, no, it's all good. I'm happy to be here and excited to talk about Rascals.
Yes, thank you. And again, thanks for losing a little bit of sleep for me. I'm sure you've lost some sleep creating the game as well. So let's start off with before we get into the game, before we get into Zine Quest, let's try get to know a little bit about Giles. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Right. Well, I am, I guess, first and foremost, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. I'm a husband and a father. Got three kids and a teacher by day, and I work on games industry stuff in the evenings. So I've done a lot of freelance work over the years. I've worked for Spartan Games on Dystopian Wars and Halo Fleet Battles and a bunch of their miniatures games before they went under, and then have done some other freelance work in the role playing sphere for Modifius Entertainment, Cubicle 7, Red Scar, and some other companies as well. So done a bit of freelance work there. Last year for Zine Quest, I heard it was coming up. I was excited to, start doing some things of my own and releasing those. So for the 2020 Zine Quest, I wrote and published a game called Corsairs, which is a game about skyships and floating islands, and all the excitement that goes with. And so I had a lot of fun doing that and learned a lot running that Kickstarter. We printed Corsairs last year and sent that out to backers, so that was completely fulfilled. And back this year with Rascals. So yeah, just excited to see what comes. I've got more things planned for 2021, and we'll see how it all pans out.
Really interesting. You got a pretty deep background in game making. That's really cool. So that kind of answers my second question about your gaming experience. But it's not maybe not your professional experience, but how about your personal games that you like to play? What got you into gameplay, and what are your kind of go to games now?
I distinctly remember I was in primary school. I think I was in about grade 4 or 5, and I'm not sure what that translates to elsewhere in the world, but I was probably about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. And one of the teachers at the school brought in a bunch of Warhammer miniatures. This would have been in the 90s, I guess. And I know that for many years after that, I harassed my parents to get me things like Empire steam tanks and Carl's Franz on Griffins and things like that for birthdays and Christmases. So I played Warhammer, and that was really my introduction to this style, to miniatures gaming first of all. Played miniatures games for a long time and historical games, got into DBM and DBA and a few other things. And then I was a great lover of Lord of the Rings. And at a bookstore in the town, one of the towns I grew up in Bendigo, I happened to come across a book that was called MERP, Middle Earth Role Playing,
Hmm.
and it had a picture on the cover of the Nazgul, and it had Frodo and Sam sort of cowering, and that was that. I bought that, and I have this just lasting memory of reading. There's an introductory sort of scenario description at the opening of that book about an adventure, a group of adventurers exploring a tower and sort of encountering an orc. And I remember lying on the floor actually reading that, and it just it it just changed. It really just opened my mind into terms of in terms of what gaming could be. Through high school, I played MERP, I played Star Wars, the West End games version of Star Wars. Loved all of that, and started creating my own games. Played a lot of different role playing games, and created my own as well. Then got into board games heavily, and I was into board games very heavily. I still am actually. I've got um, too big a collection of board games. Uh, but it's something I love and something I do with my family. And decided, I don't know, maybe 5, maybe longer than that, years ago, to get back into miniatures gaming with Dystopian Wars, which was published at that time by Spartan Games. Really enjoyed that, and I started a podcast called Element 270. Got into contact with the company, and did a little bit of work for them, and that sort of led me into doing the freelance work and working on a number of the games that they'd released, and then contact with Modifius and other freelance work in the industry. And then I sort of rediscovered my passion, I guess, for creating games of my own, and here we are. At the moment, if we talk about go-to games, I'm running. I just finished running a campaign for Star Wars: Edge of the Empire with one group. That I'm the GM of two groups locally, and just finished a campaign with Edge of the Empire with one group, and I'm in the process of. We're sort of moving towards the end of a campaign of Edge of the Empire with another group. So I'm really enjoying that at the moment. But yeah, I like a lot of different role playing games, and so that's where I'm at in terms of the things that I guess I play, and my history with gaming.
Yeah, I'm a big board game lover myself as well. Um, so on to Rascals. Um, why don't you give me and whoever's listening the elevator pitch for Rascals? I saw a little bit of a couple pages that you sent me, and it doesn't look like anything else that might be coming out on Zine Quest, at least that I've seen from the creators that I'll be interviewing. Um, it looks like it uses a deck of cards instead of dice. You want to kind of just tell us about Rascals? I don't want to give away too much.
Sure. Well, Rascals is a science fiction game, and the idea for the setting came to me when I've been watching the Star Wars movies with my son, and we watched Rogue One, Rogue 20. I don't know what I'm saying now. We watched Rogue One, and I watched, I think, on Netflix, some of the Bourne movies as well, recently. And the idea of a group of adventurers, characters who had been involved in, had been intelligence operatives or spies or special ops or criminals or whatever it might happen to be, but they'd been in the thick of action, and they'd managed to get out of that situation, but something had pulled them back in, and they were going on a sort of a last big mission, one where they might survive, they might not survive, but the the a lot depended on the success of their mission. And that really, for me, was the grounding, the linchpin, I guess, for creating the setting for Rascals. Rascals is a science fiction game, and the setting is built around something called the Network, which is a collection of star systems. It was 230 odd star systems, um, which underwent a sort of a civil war, and that is sort of coming out of that period of turbulence. There's a new government in place, and the characters were heavily involved in the later stages of that civil war. They managed to escape, find a new life for themselves, but there's something that's pulled them back into their old lives, and they've got to complete a sort of a last mission. that holds uh, significance. That there's a narrative weight to what it is they're doing in terms of the setting, and so that really was the linchpin that I built the setting around for Rascals. As for you mentioned cards. Rascals does use cards as a resolution system. I when I was watching Rogue One, I had the idea was that the house always wins. In this scenario, that the players are playing the odds and they're hoping to make it as far as they can, but the house always wins. And what does the house play? The house plays cards, of course. And so, I messed around with some different dice mechanisms to begin with, but I really kept coming back to this idea of cards and the idea of blackjack originally, and I built some various systems around blackjack that sort of took too long to resolve issues. So in the end, I made it fairly simple that the players, I should say, have a hand of cards, and the resolution system. Let's say you want to try something. You want to leap from a bridge that's about to be on the receiving end of a missile onto a cable that happens to be hanging out over space. You would take a challenge, and the GM would set a difficulty for the challenge, either easy or average or difficult, and there might be some risk involved as well. And all of this is based around card play. So the players have a hand of cards that they've got, and the difficulty decides how the GM will play cards, and the risk stipulates that the players, if there's risk involved, and if there's risk involved, it means that there is some sort of emotional or physical tax on the characters. So they are risking something physically or emotionally, something from their energy, from their in the game, it's called hustle. The chips that the players have got is called hustle. So it's risking some of their hustle in order for them to achieve a task. So if there's risk involved, then the GM might say there's one or two risk involved with this challenge. The players might decide to take on that challenge. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump for that swinging cable. The GM says, look, it's hard and it's going to involve one risk, because if you misjudge it, you might end up pulling a muscle or a tendon or whatever else. Or worse comes to worse, if you fail the test, then there's going to be a drop involved. Um, so as I said before, the difficulty stipulates how the GM plays their cards. If it's easy, the GM will draw two cards off their deck and they'll play the lower of the two cards. And if it's average, the GM will just draw a card and they'll play that card. And all the cards played by the GM go face down into the middle of the table, which we call the pot. The players, sorry, if it's difficult, I should say, the GM will draw two cards and then choose which of the two cards they want to play. So they could play the higher one, but they could play a different card. And we might get into why they might choose that option a little afterwards, but they'll choose the card they want to play and put it face down in the pot. The players then will take a card out of their hand and play it face down into the pot. They'll play any hustle into the pot that they need to, depending on the risk involved. And then the cards are revealed. If the player's card's higher, they succeed and they get back their hustle, and they get to take a hustle from the GM. And the hustle that they take from the GM, they can keep for themselves, or they can give to another player. If the cards are a draw, the players lose, but the player gets to do something. They get to draw a card, they get to take a hustle, or they get to add a twist to the story, what's called a feat. So they achieve something even though that there was no success. And then if the characters fail, then they're unsuccessful. And, all the normal rules for failure apply as per an RPG. They lose any hustle that they played into the pot. Their test was a failure, all that sort of stuff. So that's the basic mechanisms, but there are a bunch of other sort of systems added onto that, where if the players play a royal card, a jack or a queen or a king, they can do something extra. They can draw a hustle, they can draw a card, they can add a feat, they can add a twist to the story. Or if they all of the characters represent an archetype. So there's 4 archetypes in the game. There's, and these represent the different types of characters that we might find in an action style movie. You've got the face, the bravado, the talker, the storyteller, the convincer, the trickster. And they're the heart. You've got the brains, the guy who comes up with the solutions, or the girl that comes up with the solutions, um, the plot of the planner, the strategist, and they also can fix and heal as well. So anything to do with knowing things is to do with brains. There's the muscle, needs no introduction.
Yeah, yeah.
Guns, breaking things, that's the muscles deal. They're clubs, and then there's because of course they are, and then there's the stick, and the stick is to do with movement. They're the parkour character, the driver, the pilot. They're the character that is good at moving and so on. And the other way cards, I guess, can be, you can manipulate the cards you play if you are of an archetype. So if you're the stick, for example, your um, um, uh, the name of it, your type of cards, diamonds, for example, your suit. That's the word I'm looking for. Your suit of cards, diamonds. If you're doing a stick challenge, if you are the stick and you are jumping from the bridge that's about to take a missile to a cable, that's a stick challenge. That's a movement challenge. You are the stick, so your speciality is diamonds. If you play a diamond, then you get a bonus out of it. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can manipulate the cards you play. If you play something that is a strength of yours, which is your archetype, or later on characters with experience can buy other strengths, then you can do that. If you play a royal, then you can add things into the game as well. So there's lots of different ways to sort of play with the odds, but the basics of it is that the GM will play a card based on the difficulty. The players will choose a card from their hand and play that, and then it's resolved. And the idea, the idea, it came out of the Bourne movies, in the sense of you've got this character that is going from situation to situation, and they're getting beat down, they're getting worn down. That's your hand of cards. You're feeding these cards out. Your luck is slowly dwindling as your opponents gather, and you knock that person out, and you manage to grab the motorcycle and make it a block, but then there's road blockade or whatever else. And um, you know, so your hand is slowly being dwindled down as you face these challenges. But then there's rules in the game for you, for the characters to try and break that momentum, to change the scene, to duck into the cafe, keep their head down while all the mooks are running past, with their guns out looking for you, and they can take a second wind, and that allows you to draw more cards or refresh your hand or whatever it might be. So there's lots of different ways to sort of play your hand and to manipulate the odds. But yeah, definitely the idea came out of that, the watching Rogue One, really, and watching those Bourne movies, and just getting that sense of these characters slowly facing greater and greater odds, and escaping and escaping, and just by the skin of their teeth. And then you know they manage to find some respite, and rebuild, and to have another go. So that really is the crux of the system.
Very, very cool. Yeah, I like the idea. I like the battle mechanics of, it's you're playing a hand, and it kind of, in my eyes, if I could see myself playing it, it would bring on a lot more tension, because I already know what I have. The GM may already know what they have, or they just put the card on the, and they just test their fate, so to speak. So it's kind of like, you don't need a poker face. Just let's flip the cards up, and you either win or you lose. I like that. Um, so yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So the characters in the game, do you play a human type character, or do you get to pick your class of character?
So in Rascals, the characters are defined by four archetypes. There's the brains, the face, the muscle, the stick.
Hmm.
I sort of already gave the pitch of what they represent. That is the sort of the defining characteristic of your character. In addition to that, each character, depending on their archetype, gets to pick a trait. Uh, they're called tricks in the game, and those tricks allow you to break the rules in different ways. So the muscle might take a trick that allows them to pick how they damage an enemy ship, or to use more ammo than the weapon allows, or the brains might take a trick that allows them to heal more than the healing rules allow, or that allows, the stick might take a challenge that allows them to always succeed in a stick challenge if they play the right cards, or whatever it might be. So those tricks are, there's four tricks per archetype. Essentially, with your characters, you'll pick a name, you'll pick an archetype, the face, the brains, the muscle, the stick, and then you'll pick based on that archetype, you'll pick a trick. And there are four tricks per archetype, just in the base game. And those are really the defining characteristics of your character. There are some other things like equipment, weapons do different things, and so on. But really, the crux of the characters comes down to those simple factors.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's move on to Zine Quest. You had said that you did Zine Quest last year with Corsairs.
Yep.
And Corsairs and Rascals, they don't go hand in hand, correct? They're two completely separate games.
Totally different games, yeah. So Corsairs is a sort of a 17th, 18th century sky ships, you know, um, style of setting. The characters are pirate sort of characters. They come from an island called Taboa. That island is under threat from the empires that are around it. This island is fiercely independent. So the characters sort of, represent this sort of energy around independence, this fierce sort of independence for the island. These islands are all, floating islands in the molten sea, and the empires just want to mine them for the ore in them, the repellium in them that helps these sky ships float. So there's all these sort of themes about imperialism, colonialism, independence, and so on in Corsairs. Corsairs uses a dice-based mechanism with exploding d6. So very different game to Rascals. Rascals is built around cards, as we've talked about, sci-fi setting. The design parameters for both were very different, and the sort of the design goals for both were very different. Um, you know, I come from a background of playing lots of different RPGs and loving lots of different systems, and really loving games where the systems are designed to bring the setting elements to the fore, to allow the stories of the setting to sort of become the key focus of the game. And so both these games are designed around that concept, and it's why both of them are it's completely different.
Okay. All right. Good. I just wanted to make sure that they weren't kind of hand in hand. Um, so I guess a real question about Zine Quest is why choose to what drove you to be a part of Zine Quest last year and this year?
Um, I had wanted to be doing my own stuff for a while. I'd been working as a freelance writer for various game companies for maybe 5, 6 years, probably longer. You know, I I think I've contributed to 30 plus source books and games and things like that, and Look, I've loved doing that, but I also wanted to produce my own material and to write my own games. I missed Zine Quest in 2019, the first one. Um, 2019 was the first one. And I missed that, but I sort of caught the end of it, in the later stages of it, and I really loved the energy around it. And I decided through the year that that I would set aside sort of October, November, December um, of 2019 to prepare myself for the 2020 Zine Quest. Over on my website, carrot.games.com, you can find, I've got maybe 20, 30 articles there written um, about my decision to do that, um, to participate in the Zine Quest, and you know the decisions that I've made and why I made them and the mistakes I made and what I learned from them. But yeah, I definitely it came out of the idea that I wanted to do things of my own. I'd written a couple of sort of micro RPGs, that sort of single page RPGs. I'd tried a sort of Patreon route for release for them. That was sort of limited in terms of its success. Um, you know, when I looked at the various options that were available to me, it just seemed that ZeneQuest had a really good energy about it. And it gave me an opportunity to sort of push myself to do a whole bunch of different things that were outside, my sphere of experience, um, to run a Kickstarter. Never done that before. To have a game laid out for printing, never done that before. All of those things were, um, things that I wanted to challenge myself to learn about and to do. Corsairs was a fantastic learning experience, and Rascals has been a fantastic learning experience. And as a part of that, as I said, I've tried to sort of catalog my journey and the things that I've learned, and put those up on my website. Hopefully, that they'll be useful for other people that are going through those processes for the first time. Whether it's a part of ZeneQuest or otherwise. But ZeneQuest has got such a fantastic energy about it. I loved participating in it last year. And I'm really, really excited for 2021.
Yeah, there is a big. It almost reminds me of, and I said this in the last interview I had of the Super Bowl in America. It's a huge, huge, huge event. It seems, and it seems like it's the one thing that if anybody does a Kickstarter, that's what they want to get in on because there's such a large amount of traction, especially this year, that I've seen.
Yeah, I've seen some stats. One of the Twitter users, Zeshio, is does a fantastic job of cataloging ZeneQuest projects, and there's a high probability of success based on his analysis of the past two Zine Quests for Kickstarter projects during that time. And there's certainly a huge amount of energy around it. There's a lot of creators putting stuff out, a lot of creators trying new things. It's just, Twitter and the various discords and social media services are just a buzz, in January, February, in the lead up to it. And, you know, it is it's got a real energy about it, and it was just wonderful to participate in it last year. I was lucky enough, Corsairs funded, and we successfully fulfilled it last year, and I'm just really excited to be a part of it again this year.
Great, and we know that backing doesn't mean buying. It says it all over Kickstarter. I get that. I don't think you'll have an issue getting your game backed. It seems pretty awesome, honestly. Yeah, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. I don't want to speak too soon. So can you tell us just a little bit about the backer incentives? I know that for me, when I'm looking at Kickstarter, if I'm going to back a project, I'm going to back a project. But with Zine Quest, there's probably 30 different projects I want to back, and I have to kind of budget myself, or else my wife is
Oh,
gonna kill me. Um,
yeah. No,
so
I completely
what?
identify.
Yeah, what kind of backer incentives might you put up?
So last year I ran with a whole bunch of stretch goals, and they got some traction, but um, you know, also, I sort of felt like they didn't get a huge amount of engagement based on the backers and things like that, because I think there's so many projects during Zine Quest as well. It's hard to keep track of what each project is doing. I'm only talking from my personal experience, but I'm sort of like, yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
and then not going back and seeing what's happening with any of them. I think last year I wrote a ridiculous amount of backer updates, and I've got to apologize for any of my backers last year for that. It was too many. But for Rascals, basically, the way it's going to be set up is it's going to be $8 US for the PDF. So PDF of Rascals, 36 interior pages, 4 cover pages. Um, so it's slightly bigger than Corsairs was last year. Um, and in that you get full game rules, character creation. There are rules for there's a set of rules for the GM to help them create the problem that the characters might face. It's all based on card draws. You draw a card. Which character might be linked to the problem? Oh, it's the stick character, or it's this character, or it's you draw this one. Oh, it was an old friend from an old mission, or it was whatever it might be. Who's behind it, and then who's really behind it, because we all know that the people behind the mask aren't really the people behind the mask.
Yeah.
So there's a whole system for generating the problem. There's rules for spaceships and for vehicles in there as well. And those are really cool. I think they're really cool little systems for the weapons and spaceships and vehicles. I think they're a bit of fun. So there's those things. So that the $8 US will get you the PDF, 15 US for the physical copy, and then shipping is on top of that. Shipping from Australia, unfortunately, isn't cheap. That's unfortunately the way things are, and I'm charging for the shipping, a little bit less than what it costs me to ship the zines. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And shipping at the moment is, uncertain. So, but yeah, so that those are the two core backer levels. There's a sort of a super platinum special level for anyone who feels like going above and beyond, and that'll be where I personally write a problem, an individualized problem that'll get put in, the envelope with your zine and sent to you. It'll be on the same problem sheet that comes with Rascals, but it'll be front and back, and some of it might be typed, some of it will be handwritten. I can't promise there won't be bad pictures involved with that either, but they'll each be, some, wacky story idea that people can get. So there'll be a limited amount of those available as well. And then lastly, instead of stretch goals this year, and I'm not ruling out stretch goals, and we'll see how the Kickstarter goes as to whether I look at doing other things like, last year it was supplements for the game. This year, depending on how the project goes, it might be further supplements. It might be adding bells and whistles like foil stamping, or whatever it might be to the zine itself. Just improving the quality of the actual physical product. But we'll just see how the project goes before I commit to those. But the other thing I wanted to do, and this came out of 2020, and 2020 has been a hell of a year. I think we can all agree on that wherever we are in the world.
Hmm?
And I had never ever played an online game before 2020, ever. And in 2020, I played, a bunch of board games through Tabletop Simulator with local friends and groups. Which was a great way of connecting and getting together and so on. I ran two, at one point, three different RPG sessions a week, running Symbaroum and Edge of the Empire. And, I've had a great time running role playing games online over the last, 8 months. So, one of the things I wanted to do was to provide a way for people to connect and play Rascals online. And with that, one of the guys locally helped me build a what will be a DLC downloadable version or downloadable table for Rascals in Tabletop Simulator. I had a little bit of trouble with Roll20 and some of the other more common sort of role playing game platforms, because Rascals uses card decks and poker chips and weapon cards and vehicle cards and things like that. But Tabletop Simulator was a really ideal solution. I've run some play tests in that, and those have worked really well. So I'm going to put up a free DLC for Rascals on Tabletop Simulator that people can download. It'll include character sheets that look like the character sheets you get in the game that are editable. That's based on an editable character sheet that has already been built for Tabletop Simulator. It'll include poker chips and weapon cards and vehicle cards and all those things that you might need if you're at a physical table. So I'm pretty excited about that as well. So those are the things really at this stage that are, I guess, on offer for Rascals.
I think that's really cool that you're offering the downloadable content to be able to play your game virtually, because I mean, I'm no scientist, but I don't think this is going to clear up, by the time your zine launches, um, or even by the time it publishes out to the public. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
And playing online, I haven't played at an actual table. So my story is I stopped when I stopped playing tabletop RPGs when I was about 15, and then 30 during the pandemic. I was like, I'm really bored. I need to do something. So I got back into playing games and playing them virtually, which led me to I didn't know what Discord was. It didn't. I'd never played an online game either. Even a video game online.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
yeah. So so to have that as an option for your game, I think is going to be ideal, because I don't foresee anyone not playing virtually anymore. I mean, I'm sure once everything clears up, people will play with their local team, their local, game groups and stuff like that. But I've met a lot of really, really interesting people, really cool people who, that I never would have had a chance to meet with. I mean, we played Call of Cthulhu um, with a guy from Wales, and it was great because he came with his own accent. But I didn't have to, we didn't have to worry about anyone butchering someone else's accent. And he was a cool player. He's a really cool guy, and he still is around on the Discord now. So I mean, that's how this all started. This whole podcast thing started with me playing games, and then seeing that there was a market for people or watching people play, or even getting interested in the game. And that's how all this started. So the pandemic did something good for me, at least for now. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look,
so
I'm lucky enough. I'm an Australian, and in Australia, um, we're lucky enough that we've had state governments that have put in a lot of different measures, and have meant that the pandemic sort of hasn't spread to the degree it has elsewhere in the world. But even so, I'm allowed to, but we're fine to go and catch up in real space and to do all of those things. But there's still, you know,
that's
it,
great.
it's easy to get together online.
Oh
It's
yeah.
because you don't have to worry about your timing as much as you do, trying to catch up in real life. So it just provides options, that I had never anticipated prior to 2020. It's been a very different year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's saying it very nicely. Um, so is Rascals? Is it a solo venture? I know that we had talked a little bit about artwork. I'm a big art guy. Did you get artwork commissioned, or is someone part of your group doing artwork, or how is that working?
Yeah, so the artist for Rascals is um, a guy from Bogota called Juan Akoa, who's just an absolutely brilliant artist. He actually uploaded today the sketches for Rascals, all of the cover sketch, all of the interior art for it. And he's uh, planning on inking those up next week, ready to drop into the zine. So I'll be slowly teasing out the artwork in the lead up to February when the Kickstarter goes live. But he's a phenomenal artist, and it's been just an absolute pleasure working with him. Last year I had Felicity Hayworth, who was an Australian artist, do the art for Corsairs. But yeah, and she was wonderful. But this year, going with the science fiction theme. One was, his art just stood out as something that I felt really reflected that theme beautifully. And having a look at his sketches today, I'm just so excited to see, what they're going to look like once they're all inked up because I'm really, really, over the moon with how they've come together. I think, that the art for this is going to look really, really cool. It's black and white. It's inked. It's really bold tones. That light and dark, which is the whole zine is built around that. Um, that light dark, white black is really strongly emphasized, and I'm really really looking forward to seeing that art come together. So definitely not a solo enterprise. In terms of the writing and the layout and those things, I did those things. So I'm at fault if there's any issues with those. But the art, nobody's going to complain about, and all of that's done by Juan Okoa. He's just a phenomenal artist. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely, me as well. And I can tell that you're excited about it. I mean, the whole time we've been talking about Rascals, you've had a smile on your face the entire time. So if you're excited about it, that makes me excited about it.
I'm
Because
good, glad to hear.
because I know anything that I create. I've never made a game, but anything that I create, be it a song or a short story or anything like that, I can always find a problem with it, and I'm not very excited with the final product all the time. Like when I would make music, I didn't like to listen to my own music. I felt it was very strange. Um, the podcast, I personally don't listen to the podcast because I've lived it. I've lived it.
Yep.
That's just me, and I don't like the sound of my own voice. So I hope everyone else who does listen to the podcast does like the sound of my voice.
You sound completely different. I've done podcasting in the past, and you sound completely different listening to yourself than what you do
Oh yeah,
speaking.
oh yeah, 100%, 100%. So before we kind of end, um, let's talk about any other games that you might have, that you might be working on, or anything else that you'd like to promote.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So, Rascals is my second, I guess, big game. Second zine game, anyway. The first was Corsairs, and Corsairs is available at the moment. You can find that on caradoc.games.com. That's CARADOC games.com. And you can also find that on Drive Through RPG and itch.io as well. Um, as well as that, I've got a bunch of micro RPGs. Those are just little silly games. One of them is called Freedom or Toaster, where you are a robot and you were on sale in a robot shop. And then the law passed that robots that look like humans were a no-no and were to be rounded up and made into toasters. And so you've got to escape them all. But each player, every time they speak, every sentence they utter, they have a robot noise that they've got to make, whether it's beep or boop or whiz or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so that's a silly sort of one shot that you can play. Brigands of Sherwood is another, where you are actual thieves, and just caught up in Robin Hood's silliness of wanting to give away to the poor. You don't want to give away to the poor. You want to keep those riches for yourself. And so you're trying to do all the stealing, but every time Robin Hood shows up, you've got to give it away. And then every time the sheriff shows up, he thinks you're one of Robin Hood's men, so he doesn't want you around. So, I've got a couple of games just of that sort of ilk. There's another Owlbear Omelette where you're a goblin who is sick to death of the Goblin King chowing down on owlbear omelets. It's just one rule for the rich, another for the poor, and you've decided enough is enough, and you've decided to raid the Goblin King's dungeons and go and find the owlbear nests and steal an owlbear egg for yourself to make an omelette, and that'll show the man. So there's a whole bunch of just micro RPGs. There's not a whole. That's pretty much all of them actually, of micro RPGs. We've got Corsairs. Corsairs has got two supplements, Smoke and Oakum, which expands on skyships and sailing and the sort of rules around chases and combat between airships and so on. And Speed, Strength, and Wits, which is all about expanding character development in Corsairs in lots of different ways. And then Rascals obviously be coming out for Zine Quest. We've also got later this year, I've got another game called Heralds, which will be coming out later this year, which is a sort of fantasy post-apocalyptic fantasy game, which I'm really excited about as well. I was working on last year and this year, so I'm really excited to keep working on that. And then some other stuff that I've got in the background that I'm working on as well as continuing to support Corsairs and Rascals and Heralds when it finally comes out. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff planned and things that you can keep track of, and you can find all of that over at caradoc.games.com.
I will make sure that I add the link to Caradoc Games in the description of both the podcast and the video. One major question that I didn't ask you: when do you expect to launch for Zine Quest 3?
It's going to be early February, probably on February the 2nd. And that's, February the 2nd, my time is about February the 1st, I think, most other places. So right at the start of February, I'm expecting to launch Rascals. I will announce it to the world. I'll scream it from every social media platform that I have access to, through every means that I can lay my little hands on. So if you follow me at all on any social media service, or follow RPG Zines on Facebook's a fantastic group. RPG Zines on Reddit. I'm Caradoc P on Twitter. Or at Caradoc Games or any of those places, you will hear about it. But definitely early February, and hopefully right at the start of Zine Quest.
Yeah, and I will make sure to share the link to the Kickstarter for Zine Quest on my Discord, as well as any updates or anything for anyone who is interested. I'm sure you'll see me on the RPG Zine page on Facebook. I love that page. I mean, it's a very supportive group of people in that page on that page.
It's one of the things I love about Zine Quest, and love about that page, that Facebook group, is a phenomenal example of it, is how willing people are to sort of help each other up. There's no sort of trade secrets or I've got this secret sauce that I'm not going to reveal a recipe to. Everybody's very open with the information they share. They're very supportive of each other and very hopeful for success for each other. It's just that's one thing I've absolutely loved about the Zine Quest community, and about that Facebook group in particular. phenomenal. Yeah, really good.
Absolutely. And one of the things that was proposed in that RPG Zine fan page or Facebook page was the incentive, or not the incentive, but the event of $28, 28 days, which is for every day in February, you back a game that you are not already backing, a minimum of $1. And that will help that specific game and creator get more backers, get more dollars, help them fund their project, and also depending on what the project is, it helps with their like the Kickstarter algorithm and
Oh,
will make it more present to the regular everyday Joe Schmo public who might not be looking for that specific kind of project.
no, that's a phenomenal idea, and I've signed up to do that. I'll pledge to do that as well. I know that I budgeted a certain amount of money for Zine Quest, and I'm already confident that it's not enough.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, same here.
but it's funny you say that. Last year, I wrote a blog post about this. I think it was called "Reaching My Bubble" or something to do with a bubble. Um, and you know, there was a point in the Corsairs Kickstarter, and the Zine Quest Kickstarters are like 14 days. And there was a point in the Corsairs Kickstarter where, and it wasn't that far into it, where I was like, I've said this on Facebook, and I've said it on Twitter, and I've said it on Reddit, and I've said it on every social media service that I have access to. I've said it multiple times. I've sent it to everybody that I know. I've done as many interviews as I can connect with. I feel like I am, at the end of my bubble, my social media bubble, and there comes a point, and I'm sure every creator can identify with the idea that, or the feeling that you reach a point where you feel like you've shouted into the room, and shouting anymore is not going to help. You've reached the people you're going to reach, and trying to get beyond that room is really, really difficult. So that $28, 28 days, or 28 projects, sorry, is great idea, for helping projects reach outside that bubble, reach outside that room. I'm really looking forward to taking part in it, so it should
Ab-
be good.
Absolutely, same here, and that's something that I pledge to do as well. And I would strongly suggest to anyone who's looking for something new, um, and I'm a big proponent of support any kind of artist, support an indie artist anytime you can. If it's $1 for a print, or I'll do you a sketch for $5 or whatever the case may be. It's going to help them get materials to create more and more, because um, you don't necessarily need money to create, but you need money to get the word out. And
Oh, for sure.
I understand that 100%. I personally would do everything I can to help an artist. Even if it's something like this, helping get the word out.
No, I really appreciate the time you've taken, mate. It's yeah,
I
very much
appreciate you.
appreciated.
I appreciate you letting me talk to you. It's now 3:08 in the morning where you are, so
Yeah, yeah.
so thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. And I just want to plug one thing here. If you want to know more about the Rollers of Relay, anyone listening can go to our link tree, linktr.ee/Rollers of Relay, where you can find all the pages to our social media pages, the invite to Discord, come over and talk with us, chat with us, play games with us, the Ko-fi page, video page, all kinds of things. So come on over. We hope to hear from you. And Giles, thanks so much, man. I appreciate you talking with me. I look forward to Rascals.
No, cheers, mate. Thank you very much for having me. I have a habit of talking too much, so apologies for that.
Not a problem.
Um, but no, it was a real pleasure, and thank you very much.
If you didn't talk too much, I would have to talk too much, and then nobody wants that. They're here to listen to you. They're not here to listen to me. So thank you so much, and you've expanded a lot on Rascals, and I really, really look forward to it. And I hope anybody who watches this backs you. And I wish for you nothing but success during Zine Quest 3.
No, thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate it, and thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Giles. Take it easy.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yep.